Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled The Divided Nation of Yisra'el, Part 7. The time has come for us to align on our core values and our core beliefs. The podcast objectives are analyze the role of our values and beliefs in achieving unity, reveal why Yahushua Messiah is being forced to divide our nation, reveal why Yahuwah commands us to turn away from false believers, and make an invitation for you to join me in my quest for unity. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcasts or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us, for these are troubling times and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. The diversity of core beliefs. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome back to our Word from a Watchman series. In our most recent lesson, we analyzed how Yahushua Messiah is the great dispeller of darkness and how he is unifying all who walk according to his light. Now, at the conclusion of that podcast, I revealed a key matter, which I will restate at this time in the form of an inflection point. This is one I advise you to bookmark and to share as you are led. There is no path to oneness with Yahuwah Elohim that is not established upon the light of Yahushua Messiah. Now, this is crucial for, as this truth is the foundation of our faith and our core values, it is also the primary driver for our core beliefs. And if men and women are not aligned on their core beliefs, there can be no unity. And this is what we have witnessed for the full duration of the restoration movement. To wit, fruitless attempts at unity that have all failed due to the diversity of core values, which result in a diversity of core beliefs. Now, this brings us to the question of the hour and this lesson. Vis-a-vis, knowing that it is the will of Elohim that his people are unified, how do we finally achieve unity? The answer is sure, and I have already begun to tell you. To wit, the children of Elohim have the same core values. Look here. Unlike the false Hebrews and the dying nation of Yisra'el, we value the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. And the primary degrees of his standard are captured in the image to the left. Now, for many days, I have referred to this model as the pinnacle of holiness, i.e., the path to perfection, i.e., an illustration of the way of holiness, accounting for the 64 degrees of the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. From now, I will also begin to refer to this model as the Tehuda, that is, the testimony. For look, listen, it has been written, bind up the witness, i.e., testimony, seal the Torah amongst my taught ones. In this passage, Yahushua Messiah is using the prophetic voice of the Ruach of Elohim, commanding his disciples, past and present, to guard the testimony, i.e., the Tehuda. For the Tehuda is a witness to our adherence to his Torah. Ergo, by adhering to the 64 degrees of perfection, the Ruach of Elohim bears witness that we are being sealed by the Torah of Yahushua Messiah. And because we value his standard, we are being girded with truth and fed with knowledge. This, my friends, is the Tehuda. This is the testimony of all who have the same spiritual values as Yahushua Messiah. And thus, we are the only ones in this nation who have the potential to be unified. Here is why. Anyone who does not have the testimony of Yahushua Messiah, i.e., the Tehuda, is operating in lawlessness. And this, my friends, is why they cannot be unified. This is why the restoration movement, from a visible perspective, has been a complete disaster, marred by division, thievery, murder, and destruction. My dear friends, just look at the image to the right. Look carefully at all the degrees of lawlessness you see in this dreadful mountain and ask yourself the following question. How can men and women be unified if they are infected with any or all of the 80 degrees of lawlessness? The answer is sure. They can't. And this should be abundantly clear, for division is one of the 80 degrees of lawlessness. Not only this, but you must always remember that there are only two long-term spiritual states, i.e., progression and regression. Ergo, the following is true. There is no such thing as a partial infection when it comes to lawlessness. For over time, you will either eliminate every degree or you will be infected with every degree. Now, that was the inflection. Here is the problem. To wit, our nation has achieved critical mass. Vis-a-vis, we have reached the closing interval of the parable of the darnel of the field. That is, the separation of the spiritual wheat from the spiritual tares. Now, let me tell you something. This may be a bad thing for the tares, but trust me, this is a good thing for the wheat. My dear friends, by separating us from the tares, we, the renewed nation of Yisra'el, can finally achieve unity, for we have the same spiritual values and the same core beliefs. Ergo, we must further analyze how Yahushua Messiah is dividing our nation so that we, the set apart ones, can be unified. Let's get started. The impetus for division. Now, I would like to begin this section with Scriptures that confirm Yahushua's role as the great divider and the purpose for his division. In the books of the Nazarene, 1, 19 to 20, he will teach all men the ways of Yahuwah and how to walk in his paths. So swords shall be made into plowshares and spears into billhooks, and peace will reign over men. He will grow into a sturdy tree, under the shade of which many nations will find peace. Yet he will also test the strength of our people, tearing them apart in dispute. He comes as a separator, dividing the sheep from the goats, showing each his rightful place. He will place a sword in the hands of the weak and strengthen them, and the ungodly will be smitten. In the books of the Nazarene, 6, 7, behold, you are witnessing the accomplishment of Yahuwah's design. I am chosen to be the tongue of the Father, speaking his words to you, his people. I am the light shining in the midst of darkness, even as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. So do I come to show how the good are to be separated from the wicked. Books of the Nazarene, 11:16. I have come to winnow the grain from the chaff, and those who follow me must not be half-hearted in the cause. I separate the sheep from the goats, accepting one and rejecting the other. And a sheep does not mate with a goat. Books of the Nazarene, 13:18. You may think in your hearts that I come to bring peace to the earth and concord among men. And this is true, for such will be under the rule of Elohim. However, before this comes about, those who oppose it must be defeated. Therefore, I come to arm those who are loyal to the cause, to put a sword into the hands of men. Henceforth, families will be divided against themselves, and brother will be separated from brother, and father set against son. Books of the Nazarene, 13:62. Brave men converge on the battlefield, while cowards seek their hideouts. The day of decision will come like a roll of thunder, and on that day, those serving the cause of Yahuwah will be separated from those who serve the powers of darkness. Now, there are many key takeaways in the passage I just read, and yet there simply isn't enough time for us to address them all. Ergo, I encourage you to take some time to meditate on these verses as you are led by the Ruach of Elohim. My dear friends, meditate on these verses and don't be disheartened by the reality of division. On the rather, be encouraged by the prospects of unity and consider the great power and the repercussions of our decisions. As I say, this is the real reason Yahushua Messiah is being forced to divide us. It's because the dogs, goats, and swine in this nation love darkness, and they don't want him to guide us. Therefore, they are hostile towards the light because they are workers of iniquity and lawlessness. Ergo, when we bear witness to the Tehuda, they are exposed as spiritual miscreants who love darkness, for their deeds are evil. My dear friends, hear me carefully as I say, Yahushua Messiah is dividing our nation because the majority have become so delusional and insane that they would rather walk in darkness than follow the path that leads to everlasting life. And whereas in times past, it may have been harder for us to tell who is truly being set apart, let me tell you something. We, my dear friends, have reached critical mass. And thus, it's not nearly as hard in this day. Let's talk about it. Turn the page and stay away. Now, first things first, you will know the dogs, goats, and swine in this nation because they are unapologetic about their lawlessness. To wit, they are not trying to overcome lawlessness because the path they're on has no potential for victory. It's a spiritual dead end. Ergo, by accepting lawlessness as their reality, these dissenters will begin pursuing lawlessness. Ergo, they will become thoroughly infected with all the degrees you see in the image to the right. And if you see them, I beseech you, on behalf of Elohim, turn the page and stay away. As I say, they are the synagogue of Satan, for they walk contrary to the Tehudah, and they promote Satan's agenda for division. Romans 16:17 through 18 is revealing. Now, I call upon you, brothers, watch out for those who cause divisions and stumbling, contrary to the teaching which you have learned, and turn away from them. For such ones do not serve our master, Yahushua Messiah, but their own stomach. And by smooth words and flattering speech, they deceive the hearts of the innocent. 1 Timothy 6:3 through 5. If anyone teaches differently and does not agree to the sound words, those of our master, Yahushua Messiah, and to the teaching, withdraw from such. 2 Timothy 3:1 through 7. But know this, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of self, lovers of silver, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, thankless, wrongdoers, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self control, fierce, haters of good, betrayers, reckless, puffed up, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of Elohim, having a form of devotion to Elohim, but denying the power thereof, and turn away from these. 2 John 1:10 through 11. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not receive him into your house, nor greet him, for he who greets him shares in his wicked works. Now, I do say, Yahuwah could not have been clearer on his desire for his children to separate themselves from all those doing lawlessness. He even goes as far as to command us not to greet them and not to receive them in our homes. And if you're not sure why, I'll tell you. It's because Yahuwah has separated himself from these blasphemers. To wit, he is not greeting them, and he will not receive them into his home in glory. For, like Yahushua Messiah, he never knew them. Notwithstanding, separating yourself from the lawbreakers and the false Hebrews in our midst is only the first half of the equation. The second and more critical half is this: we must proclaim the Torah of Yahushua Messiah to ensure everyone who has an ear to hear can come face to face with the truth. No doubt, this will be a challenge of epic proportion, and I trust you are up for the task. Remember, we are living in a night of ignorance, which is why deception is so prevalent in our world. For ignorance is the invading army of deception. Ergo, where there is ignorance, there will always be deception. It's a Trojan horse, which is why I was so bullish concerning the spiritual virus of disregard. And this you must believe. The moment you turn a blind eye, you are beginning to be deceived. My quest for unity. Now, these things being what they surely are, I caution you, don't turn a blind eye to the lawlessness and the lawless ones in your midst. On the rather, I invite you to join me in my quest for unity, as the Ruach has laid this on my heart. Along these lines, Yahuwah is leading me to transition from the topic of the divided nation of Israel to the united nation of Israel. To wit, we will shift the conversation from division to unity, specifically the spiritual values that are driving the core beliefs of all who are being set apart. And if these are your beliefs, I will invite you to join me in my Unity project, the newest remit Yahuwah has given me, which I will share with you in more detail next Friday. In this order, we will transition back to our regular order of events. Vis-a-vis, we will continue our exposition of lawlessness next week on Monday and Wednesday, and our Word from a Watchman series on Friday. And the topics I will be addressing during my Watchman series on Fridays will be designed to unify the renewed nation of Yisra'el and to prepare us for the next major end times event in this season. Enter the second great Exodus. And so, if you are really about unity, and if you believe Yahushua Messiah is the light of the world and the great unifier of righteous men, and if you want to be in good company during the great distress, I encourage you to hear what we have to say next week. For if what we say is aligned with your core spiritual values, then there is a very good chance we will find unity in our core beliefs. And so I hope to see you next week. Yahuwah bless you until then. Now, here is the final word. I searched for unity as I climbed an endless mountain into time. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, many of us have waited many years for this day. That is, the time where Yahuwah begins to make a physical separation between those who serve him and those who are of the synagogue of Satan. As in the parable, there was the time when the wheat was forced to coexist with the tares, and this coexistence made us stronger. But all praises be to Yahuwah Elohim, for very soon the tares who have troubled this nation for many years will be no longer. Heretofore, I recommend, if you are not entrenched on one end or the other, wake up and pick a side. For anyone who is caught in the middle will be a casualty of the great divide. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson. And if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com. And I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, The Divided Nation of Israel, Part 7. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 520, an intro to deception. I will post this podcast on Monday, September 29th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The